to galacticconnection.com, one of the most popular blogs on the World Wide Web today for alternative news. Stay tuned for the latest information on our world shift from enslavement to galactic involvement, as well as current intel on any blockages impeding us from our sovereign birthright. Knowledge and self-mastery are key at this time. Our commitment is to present you with the latest breaking conspiratorial articles, off-world messages, exopolitics, cutting-edge technologies and sciences, and also an ever-significant intertwining of spiritual support and metaphysical scope that one needs to dive down the rabbit hole in search for truth with balance. We are truly on the horizon of a new golden age filled with the promise for more love, worldwide peace, and accelerated intuitive skills, where every living being can exist in cohesion and abundance. It is whatever we envision and dream this new world to be. I say to you now, let's redefine the new world to the beginnings of our own precious heaven on earth. Galactic Connection is here to provide the pulse of Mother Earth through an eclectic range of interviews each Tuesday afternoon from 3 to 4:55 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, Station 2 on BBS Radio, expanding your perspectives on how we can once and for all take back our freedoms, our joy, and our connection with our mighty I Am presence. Our intention remains true to connect hearts and minds everywhere in order to obtain global unity and galactic and universal acceptance. Our discussions will continue to cover anything to do with galactic society and our involvement with our galactic brothers and sisters. Our guests are experts in their fields, and our radio shows have been coined as some of the most thought-provoking out there. In addition to our daily blog, which runs 365 days a year, we also offer a realm of healing services such as our world-renowned implant removal processes, our spiritual past life clearings, our galactic violet ray alchemy from Alexandra, who shares in the lineage of Merlin, and other cutting-edge healing technologies. Check our site out at galacticconnection.com now, sending you a wave of light, love, and inspiration, and a personal hug and thank you for listening to our Galactic Connection radio show and visiting our blog today. Good morning, everyone. This is Alexandra Metters of galacticconnection.com. And today is a pre-recorded interview for January 31st, 2017. And I have with me one of my favorite guests. I haven't had him on in a long time, and that's Mike Harris of Veterans Today. If you haven't checked out Veterans Today, it's veteranstoday.com. It's very easy to find. And Mike, if you don't already know about him, he is the financial editor of Veterans Today. He has a very interesting background. He was a gubernatorial candidate for Arizona, and he was also the former GOP finance chairman. Check him out. He's got some phenomenal writing skills, and he writes some incredibly meaty information up on Veterans Today. So if you want to check out his bio, you can get it up there as well. We've got so much to cover. I just kind of want to dive in. We've run a little late this morning. And so to first start out, Mike, I just want to thank you because I know we kind of had to scramble to get this together this morning. There's so much going on in the world. And of course, we are on right at the beginning stages of the Trump administration. And I think where I want to begin with you, because you get so much awesome intel from overseas, is how is the Mideast looking at the United States and the new Trump administration? How do they feel about it? Are they uneasy, or are they excited? Or
well, it depends on who you talk to. Judiciously optimistic is the word coming out of Syria. They're hopeful that they can get cooperation with the Syrian government, with the Russians, and with the U.S. to actually take an aggressive stance to truly end ISIS. And what's been going on here is with the liberation of Aleppo, some wonderful things happened. And one of them is that they captured 4,000 or 5,000 of these jihadis, these terrorists. And along with the jihadis, they also captured their weapon systems. So one of the things that we need to look at is how did ISIS come into possession of TOW missiles? Now, for those of you who don't know, TOW missiles are manufactured by Raytheon Corporation in Tucson, Arizona. I've been there. I've been on the production floor. I've seen the line. I know where they're made. It's there's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. These are made by Raytheon Corporation. Now, for TOW missiles to get into the hands of ISIS, it seems unusual because if we, the U.S. is sworn not to support terrorism. That's one of our things within our government. It's against the law to do so, and hopefully no one is. But if we sell them to our allies, Israel, Saudi Arabia, Turkey, for instance, someone at the State Department has to sign off on those missiles. And they have to be given to people who are responsible with them. And every TOW missile, every weapon, I don't care if it's a rifle, has a serial number on it. They all have serial numbers. And so with this information, we should be able to go back and find out who had them last before ISIS got them. What was the chain of custody of these ordnance? Who had them? Where'd they go to? Who signed off on them? All of those things should become apparent to us. And this, as I've said on my radio show, this should be a intelligence bonanza for Russia, Iran, Syria, Hezbollah, all the people who are really actively opposing ISIS should gain a lot of good intel out of this, and we should as well. We should benefit from this, knowing who gave them the missiles. That's going to tell us a lot, because by the same token, let's say hypothetically Saudi Arabia supplied these to ISIS. Well, then Saudi Arabia has broken all of their agreements with our Department of State and our Department of Defense, because we come out, it's in our law, it's how it's written, that we will not do business with anyone who is a state sponsor of terrorism. And if Saudi Arabia, or like I said, hypothetically, is supplying these munitions to ISIS, then by default, they are a state sponsor of terrorism and need to be treated as such. So we're living in very interesting times.
I bet. And so how do you feel, Russia seems to be pleased because there's a potential meeting that's going to be between Putin and Trump on a more regular basis than there was with Obama. Have you heard anything regarding that?
Not directly. However, Trump's public statements that he wants to work closer with the Russians for the purpose of eradicating terrorism globally. I think this is absolutely the right thing to do. If there's any people in the world who should be our close ally, it should be the Russians. It's a natural fit. They're so like us. It's uncanny how much like us they actually are. And so we should have closer relationships with them than we do with any other country or any other people, if you will.
Well, so who do you see on the globe that is just really anti-Trump administration, just from your contacts?
It's not just on the globe, it's within our own country as well. What we're seeing. All right, let me give you some background here.
Yeah.
I was in Ukraine in December of 2004. I was there for the Orange Revolution. Okay. George Soros is the guy who sponsors all of these color revolutions. The one in Egypt, the Tulip Revolution, the Orange Revolution. George Soros funds this. What we're seeing going on right now in the USA is a Soros-funded color revolution against the U.S. government as it sits today. That's what's happening real time, every day. I mean, you don't get thousands of people to show up at the airport to protest this, what they're calling a ban on immigration. It isn't a ban on immigration by religion. It's a ban on immigration by geography and by threat to the country. Mm-hmm. But you don't get thousands and thousands of people to show up in every major city that takes international flights in without some organization, without some infrastructure behind it. And so what we're seeing is the Soros hand is becoming not so invisible. We're actually seeing evidence of it. We're seeing where it moved. So that's...
Yeah, and he's got his hands in the pie with something like 50 different foundations.
Yeah.
And
well, here's the good news. After 9/11, the administration, which is, in my opinion, one of the two worst presidents of my lifetime, Lyndon Johnson and George W. Bush. Those were the two unmitigated disasters for presidents that we've had. But if they were kind enough to give the Trump administration the Patriot Act and the NDAA. So, ergo, Trump has the authority to go out and pick up Mr. Soros and anyone who supports him, lock them away in a cargo container and interrogate them every day if they want to find out everything that they absolutely know. Rendition, that's the correct word. To rendition them without trial, without due process, and why not use these tools that have been so graciously given to the current administration in order to find out what's really going on?
So why do you think he hasn't?
I'm not sure. He may get around to it. I don't know. I do not know. Like I said, my crystal ball is only so good. But one thing I want to point out, and this is something that most American people are not going to remember and are not going to connect the dots. But you look at the Trump administration today, and they put the travel ban for 7 countries, okay? Now, I want you to go back in time to 2008 when General Wesley Clark was running for president, and he came out and said it was the U.S.'s plan to topple the governments of 7 countries in 5 years. Guess what? It's the same 7 countries. Okay, so you have to track these things not just today, but across time. And so, okay, why did the Trump administration articulate that the same 7 countries that Clark had targeted, or Clark said was targeted by the neocons in the Bush administration? Why did Trump target those for a travel ban? What's going on? There is a bigger picture. There's another game here. There's something. There's pieces of data that I lack that I haven't been able to connect all the dots yet. But it's something that I want to point out to every listener out there, that be aware of this. That go back and look at Wesley Clark's speech. It's on YouTube. He talks about this. He said that he was shown a plan, 7 countries, 5 years. Well, obviously they're about 10, 12 years behind schedule, but that doesn't mean they've given up. These guys are ruthless. They never give up. And that's why we need to crush this 5th column, which is operating in the USA.
Good point. In fact, I have an article here. It says they were talking about the immigration situation, and there's all this hysteria about how he's very racial and anti-Muslim and that kind of thing. And it said, what does Trump do? Did he implement his promised Muslim ban? Far from it. He backed down dramatically from his campaign promises and instead signed an executive order dominated mainly by moderate refugee restrictions and temporary provisions aimed directly at limiting immigration from jihadist conflict zones. Would you agree with that?
He has backed down quite a bit, but let's take a step much further back. Okay. This is fundamental core material every one of your listeners needs to understand. Okay. There is an element out there, and for the sake of argument today, we're going to call it the Zionist. Okay, that's just the word we're going to use today. But these people went back around 1908, 1910, decided to rewrite the Christian Bible, and they came up with the Schofield version of the Bible. Okay. There's a lot of material available on this, but that's been the version that has been embraced primarily by the evangelical movement in this country. If you go to an earlier version of the Bible, it mentions Israel, but it doesn't mention that anyone who stands against Israel will be punished. Everyone has to embrace Israel. They rewrote the Bible in order to serve a political interest 100 years later. So that's something that jumped off the page at me. Now, not only did they do that, But when the Frankfurt School moved to Columbia University from Germany in 1932, they rewrote all the academics as you know them. Everything you've been told about sociology, psychology, anthropology is a crock, okay? It's a crock. Don't believe it. Anthropology in particular, because we got this notion out of anthropology, we're all the same. That we're all exactly alike. Only thing that difference is our skin color. No, there's a lot more other differences. There's differences in temperament. There's differences in physical ability. There's differences in our neurology. There's differences in intellectual capabilities. All of these things were erased by a man named Franz Boas in anthropology. And all the anthropology that's been taught in this country for the last 60, 70 years is a set of lies. People talk about the fake news. Let's talk about the fake academia as well, because they faked that first. That's something that they did, and it's been there, it's ongoing, and it's time to re-examine everything. I'd recommend for everyone to go out there and buy an anthropology book that predates 1930 and read the differences. Read how different everything is, because this has been a whitewash, just like they rewrote the Bible.
And that goes for everything, Mike.
I know it.
Get additions in history, philosophy, I mean, you name it. I look for a lot of old books. I love old books, and it'll blow your mind.
Well, let me give you another hint. Okay, used bookstores. Who owns them?
Well, most of them are independent and ma and pa shops.
But what particularly religious group dominates that industry?
I have no idea.
Well, typically they're Jewish.
Okay.
And one of the benefits of owning a used bookstore is that you can take the books out of circulation that you want to diminish the knowledge base. Mm-hmm. You can take, if you have an anthropology book that was printed in 1890 or 1910, and you want to get that knowledge away from the public, burn the book. You buy, this is a great book. I'll give you $50 for it, and you throw it in the furnace downstairs and you burn it up. So you can get rid of that knowledge. You destroy the knowledge base. You make it harder and harder for people to find things.
Happens over and over and over again in epic.
And it happens over and over and over again. And so just be aware of that. And if you're going to sell books, sell them to an individual. Don't sell them to a used bookstore, because they will sanitize the history records.
Wow, wow.
So,
wow, that's amazing.
Hey, it is. It's what's been going on. It's what's been going on now for a long time. And it's been so low key and low profile, and nobody ever thinks about it. Nobody ever. But yet, what a better conduit to get rid of a historical record that you don't agree with and that doesn't fit the narrative of your agenda.
Yeah. Yeah,
and that's one thing that worries me about cloud-based computing, because it's all up there in the cloud. It's up there.
Be erased.
It can all be erased. It can all be modified. It can all be changed up so easily. So, the best records are hard copy, printed records. And if you're going to find anything online that's valuable, print it. Have yourself a copy. Buy a new cartridge for your printer, and print the record, because you may come back 2 weeks later, and someone's made a modification that might be subtle, might be large. You don't know, but they may have modified it, and your reference that you had to it is not going to be the same as what you remembered it being, and you're not going to challenge it because you're probably not going to catch it.
Well, and take that a step further, because of where we're at energetically, the Mandela effect, if anybody has not read up on that, please do, because we are right in the midst of it, and it is accelerating. So a lot of stuff that you know for sure that you saw on the internet, you read it with your own two eyes, you saw it in a video, and then you go back and you notice that there's things missing. This is also par for the course. Mm-hmm. And it can be literally within the one video that's still up there, but the information that you heard through that video has disappeared. So this is par for the course for what we're about to go through. Now, tell me, there was another article I read, and it says the biggest warnings are coming from China which has seen many of its red lines crossed, at least verbally, by the macho-laden administration of Donald Trump. Fireworks could begin after February 5th as the Chinese New Year's holidays wind down, and Chinese intelligence and secret society sources are saying this.
Well, you know,
I was not aware of that myself.
Okay, well, first of all, don't forget the U.S. needs enemies. Our entire country, our entire economy is based on war. It's the weapons manufacturers, the defense contractors, they're the only ones who are making any money right now. The entrepreneurship in this country is at a record low. If you drive by any strip mall, you can see lots of vacant space. Everything from shoe stores to restaurants, mom and pop stuff is going out of business. Everything is being consolidated, but the big defense contractors always do well. You wonder why the Russians can't put out weapon systems that actually work, that actually function for a tenth of the cost of what the U.S. does, and why the U.S. has to spend so much more money. It's because the defense contractors have the finest Congress that money can buy, and they build systems. The F-35 comes to mind as an example. The USS Zumwalt is another example, but they build systems that are so overblown and so exotic, if you will, that they don't work. They're never going to work. And what they do is, after the system is delivered, they've got a 20, 30-year contract to upgrade the system into perpetuity at hundreds of millions of dollars per upgrade. And it's just a revenue stream for them. So the U.S. needs an enemy. China is to the point now where their internal economy is enough. They have enough of a middle class. They no longer need the U.S. to be the consumer of the world. They have a domestic market that they can take all of their output and replow it back into their own domestic market and do well. What they're going to need is the same thing Japan needed right before World War II, and that they're going to need access to energy and commodities for raw materials. That's what China's going to need. So if they want to play that game, it's going to be a competition for energy. It's going to be a competition for raw materials. But we will see. But we don't need to engage China. We really, really don't need to engage them. Let them develop their own internal economy. It'll be good for the Chinese people. It'll be good for the Chinese government, and it's not going to harm us. One of the things that we need to do as a country is become more self-sufficient. This whole globalist agenda. Let's talk about this a little bit, because globalism is Zionism. I mean, it really.
Well, and that kind of segues into one of Trump's main campaign speech promises, which is to really solidify our nationalism, meaning, bring the jobs back to the United States, bring hope and more morale back to the United States, and also really be more strict in our immigration policy. So I was going to bring that in. So I'm sure this ties in with that.
Well, it does, and you look at how. First of all, let's look at the number of illegal immigrants in this country. They've been tossing this 11 million illegal immigrants number around now for 25 years, okay? Oh. The illegal immigrants haven't stopped coming in. They keep coming, and they keep coming, and they keep coming. The real number, Goldman Sachs has said it's up to 35 million. Wow. And Coulter says it's up to 35 million. From my time on the border in Pinell County, the Vehicle Valley, my numbers say it's closer to 55 million people in this country illegally. And this is something that the mainstream media is not going to touch, because that puts them, at 35 million, it's over 10% of our population. At 55 million, it's closer to 18% of our total population. That's a big number.
Wow.
And so people don't,
it's a wake-up call right there.
It's a wake-up call, but if you do the math and you take the numbers that the Border Patrol puts out, and they say, well, we caught this many, but we're estimating that this many more got through. And if you take that math and you backwork it all the way from the time Reagan's amnesty, which was an unmitigated disaster, by the way. One of the worst mistakes Reagan made as a president was that amnesty, because now everybody's expecting another amnesty. And so we have to say no. And Trump's building a wall. There is a benefit to the wall, because once the wall is up, it's there. Nobody's going to come around and tear the wall down. It's going to stay there. It's going to be there. However, I don't think a wall is the answer, because if we build a wall, we're falling into the trap that happened to the communist government of East Germany, and that is you have to defend the wall. Okay, a better way is internal enforcement, and we have laws on the books today that if you hire an illegal immigrant, you're subject to a $10,000 fine and you're subject to 6 months in prison. But it's not enforced. Nobody does a thing about it. So, that's one issue there. So if we would go out and you look at Tyson Foods and Marriott Corporation or any of these other companies that hire large numbers of illegal immigrants, and if you would pick up their board of directors and their top 50 managers and arrest them and fine the corporation $10,000 for all 10,000 illegal immigrants that they have hired currently. If you would do that to 2 or 3 Fortune 50 companies, you would see pink slips going out across the country left and right.
Yeah.
And once these people can't work in this country, can't get hired, there is no motive or no incentive for them to stay here. You cut off the welfare magnet that if you're an illegal alien, you don't get a dime.
Yeah.
We're not going to educate your kid. We're not going to give you free medical care. We're not going to give you food stamps. We're not going to give you Section 8 housing. Go home. We have the wherewithal to deal with this problem without building a wall and without rounding anyone up or sending them out. All we have to do is cut off the flow of goods and services to them, and by unemploying them, by enforcing the laws we have against the employers, who are the ones who benefit from exploiting these poor people. They're the ones who make money off of it. I don't make a dime off of it. You don't make a dime off of it. But if you can make money by hiring them, make a lot of money off of them. And let me give you another hint here. This is something else nobody talks about. Everybody says, oh, well, they work and they pay taxes. No, they don't. Here's what the employers
Right.
Here's what the employers do. You say, we've got 100 workers here. We have 6 guys who are using the same social security number. We know these 6 guys are illegal. Okay, so we may say that we're paying them minimum wage, $10 and whatever an hour, and we may say that we're withholding Social Security from them and income taxes and all these other withholding taxes, but the employer doesn't withhold them. He pockets that money. And he pays them just the net they would have as if they had earned it. But the government never sees the money. It doesn't show up. It doesn't. It's not in their quarterly statements when they have to pay to the IRS or to FICA or whatever. They're pocketing the dough. They're cheating the system every way they possibly can. And these are things that go on regularly. And there's an example I'll give you out of Phoenix, Arizona. Danny's Family Car Wash. Boy, they got busted hard. They were hiring all kinds of illegals, and they weren't paying any of that money that they were supposed to withhold to remit to the government for their workers. It wasn't going to the government. It was going in the owner's pocket. So this is what happens. This is what goes on. And this is why hiring illegals is so attractive to some business owners, because they don't even, it doesn't even help their bottom line. It goes straight to their pocket.
Yeah.
I mean, they're living better because of this, because of how they exploit these people. And the ones who are benefiting from this, the ones who are doing the exploiting, are the ones who need to pay for this and the ones who need to suffer. I mean, these poor saps who come up here, I mean, you can't blame them. Mexico's a basket case. They want to get out of there. But we can't afford to take on all of their problems. We can't fix our own problems. We have a permanent underclass in this country that's highly dysfunctional. We can't afford to import Mexico's underclass and support the burden for them. We need people to go back home and change their country, change it for the better. They've come here, their children have gotten free education at our expense. Go home, change your country, make it better. And one one of the rationales has been that, well, we have to accept illegal aliens because if we didn't, Mexico is so unstable that there'd be a revolution down there. Well, you know what? Maybe Mexico needs a revolution. Maybe Mexico needs to rethink how they do business and how they treat their own people. And maybe these 55 million people, if they all went back home, they could get the revolution and have meaningful change in Mexico to make that a better place so that they didn't have to come up here to scratch out a living.
Yeah. Hi, everyone. I'm sorry we have roofers at my house because there was such massive flooding in our home last week from the rains. So they started right over my office. So anyway, I've moved over here. It's not the greatest lighting, but at least Mike, you can see Mike and hear him. You gotta laugh, right? I mean,
Well, you do. You know, I mean, people don't realize that. You know, I do a radio show as well, and what a struggle it is just to make the time to do it and to have everything work right.
And coordinate time zones and people's schedules and everything else. Yeah, it's totally there. Well, so, you know, the fact that Trump has supposedly been working more so with Russia, they say that there's some sort of division being split up. In fact, you know, I was looking at it here. It says there's a region being divided.
Well, let's stop. Let's go back to the immigration issue because we're not done there yet.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah,
and,
I kind of lost my point of trail here. So.
And that's okay. But you know, the question that we have to ask ourselves, and we've had this rammed down our throats since I was a little kid, and that is, oh, we are a nation of immigrants. No, we're not. Sorry. You know, my family has lived in this country for 12 generations. I've got the family records for 8 generations in Missouri going back to 1808, right after the Louisiana Purchase when the people settled there.
Wow.
So, you know, when you tell me that I'm an immigrant, I say, no, I'm really not. I'm sort of, I'm more of a Native American than the Native Americans are. Is they claim, because you know they came over here on the Alaska land bridge and they wiped out the Clovis people who were here in order to seize their land. So you know, whenever they tell us we're a nation of immigrants, I say baloney. We're not. Do we have room for immigrants? Yeah, we have some room, but we're to the point where we need to mature as a country. It's no longer, you know, the barn door is open, we welcome all comers. You know, we can't afford that anymore because that's what's going on the Mexican border. You see what's coming across. We have drugs, we have criminals. We're not to that point. We're to the point where we need to be selective as to who we allow in the country. People who are going to benefit us, because if we have criminals coming across the border, the people who deal drugs, who prostitute women, who murder and intimidate people for their living, how is that going to shape the world where my son or my potential grandkids are going to have to live in? I want to have an influence on the world they live in, and I want it to be as good a world as possible. So we have not just a right, but we have a duty to determine who comes in this country. Are they good enough? Do they meet our criteria? Are they going to benefit my grandkids and great-grandkids' lives? Are their kids going to be compatible with them? These are all questions that nobody on the left wants to talk about, but it has to be talked about because, like I said, if we leave the door open like we have on the southern border of this country, you see what we get. You want MS-13 running LA? Then leave it open. I don't want MS-13 running LA. I want MS-13 to go back where they came from and have to deal with their own problems down in El Salvador. I don't want an El Salvador paramilitary group dealing drugs in the high schools where my kids or grandkids are going to have to go to school. You know, it's that simple, folks. It's not racist. It's not xenophobic. It's nothing. It's common sense. You know, we have a good thing going in this country. If we want to keep a good thing going in this country, we have to raise our standards. And perhaps it's time for maybe a 20, 25-year moratorium on immigration, that we have enough people. The people who have been coming into the country are not assimilating. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
Are the Muslims in Dearborn, Michigan assimilating? No, they're not. Are all the illegal aliens assimilating? No, they're not. They're not assimilated. They're not becoming American. They're taking America and turning it into a third world dung heap like they come from. And so do we want to keep the good thing we have and preserve it for our kids and grandkids? Or do we want our grandkids to have to live in a third world dung heap? That's the question. We can't fix these people who are coming in. They have to find their own way. We don't have the bandwidth or the capacity or anything in order to get these people to change unless they want to change. They all want to come here. They all want to come here. And this ties back into the lie we were told by Franz Boas, the anthropologist of the Frankfurt School, that all people are equal. We are not equal. We're very different. We're very different in temperament. We're very different in a myriad of abilities. I mean, I'm not athletic enough to play football in the NFL or play basketball in the NBA. I don't have it. I lack that. Okay? Other people lack other things that I have. So let's become a sovereign nation again, and let's close the open borders. And if we're going to have people come to this country, let's have people come here who are going to be of benefit, not just now, but for future generations as well. If we want to attract the best and brightest of the world, I welcome them, because that brings up the whole problem. Another thing people don't talk about. I'm going to go out on a limb here. Okay, I'm going to really, really go out on a limb. We have a permanent underclass in this country. And you look at the problems in Detroit, Chicago, Baltimore, East St. Louis, Missouri, they've got one thing in common. They've got a large black population. And one of the things that nobody wants to talk about, it was in the book, The Bell Curve, and it's the disparity in intellectual IQ. That's what it is. You look at entire countries in Africa. Look at the country of Cameroon. You can go on, there's a list called IQ by country. It's on Google. Pull it up. It'll show you the IQ of every country in the world, the highest being 106, South Korea, same with Hong Kong, the lowest being 63, Central African Republic. You look at Cameroon, average IQ is 64. In this country, if you have an IQ less than 70, you're considered retarded. And, it's time to have an honest discussion about race relations in this country. And we haven't had it. And you know what? I like black people. I want to see them prosper. I want to see them thrive. I want to see them do well. I'm tired of paying for it. We've spent $23 trillion on the war on poverty, and we have more poverty than ever. And so maybe it's time to rethink the things of the past that haven't worked. Earlier in this interview, I said the two worst presidents of my lifetime were George W. Bush and Lyndon Johnson. And both of them have something in common, and that is they both presided over a great American tragedy. And immediately after that tragedy, they used the opportunity to push through legislation that was not beneficial to the country. I don't think that the NDAA or the Patriot Act or any of these draconian police state issues were good for the country. Just like I don't think the war on poverty was good for the country, because anytime the U.S. has a war on anything, you get more of it. It's a license. Like the war on terror, we have more terrorism. The war on poverty, we have more poverty. War on drugs, we have more drugs. All of these wars that the U.S. government gets into they create an industry around that war. You have the pro side and the con side. The war on terror, for example. Not only do you have the terrorist, but you also have the counter-terrorist. And that becomes an industry. It becomes a profit center for some corporation out there. All of these things have become profit centers. All of these wars. Not only do you have the war on drugs, but you've got the prison industry that supports it. You've got the rehab industry that supports it.
Basically, that's what I was going to say to you is, do people fully understand, and if you can comment on this, that'd be great. Do people fully understand the politics and the money behind immigration? for the political regime? That would be my first question. Maybe talk a little bit about why were so many presidential platforms based on very open borders for immigration. It's not what people think as far as, hey, we're all one and we all want to love and be in peace and harmony. We all came from the same creator. It's way beyond that. That would be my first question. And the second question is, you know, we are literally playing a stage performance. So at this point in time, you know, yes, there are IQ issues, but a lot of that is because of the erosion of the educational system.
Wrong. Stop. Education and IQ are not related.
Well, okay.
They are not. Whether you have an intellectual capability, it was God-given, it was born to you, it's in your genetic code. And I don't care how well they educate you. If you have an IQ of 64, they can educate you to death. They're not going to get you up to 120, no matter what they do. It's not going to happen.
I don't know if I agree with that, but
doesn't matter.
That's not why I'm interviewing you.
Okay, it doesn't matter.
I get what you're saying, but that would be like saying there's absolutely no possibility to take somebody that's from, you know, the middle of a very poverty-stricken location, and if you worked with them and they had that interest and they showed that talent and that ability, that you wouldn't be able to enhance their intellect. And I've seen it myself in my career.
Stop. Let's, you know, you can't enhance their intellect. You can enhance their base of knowledge and how they operate through education. Yes, very much so. Can their lives be better? Absolutely. However, you just like, I don't care how much I go out and train, I'm never going to be good enough to play in the NFL. I just don't have the ability. I'm sorry, it's not in me. I can go to the gym and lift weights. I can do speed training. I can do all kinds of things to make myself better. But I'm never going to have the neurological gifts that a professional athlete in the NFL has. I'm just not going to get there.
You know, Mike, it's really not so much that I'm not understanding what you're saying. Okay. Nor have, and I've had these conversations with my own father. Okay. But it's more about the fact that from a spiritual perspective, I feel that we are stepping into a completely new ball game, and that mixed with politics they really don't see eye to eye at all. So for me, I'm always open to the radical changes that are going on this planet. And you're talking about making you know, kind of like a change in the way that we see things. I mean, Trump is really shaking the tree right now. There's no question about it. He's come in and he's doing things that we haven't seen done with a president in a really long time, meaning he says what he's going to do and he does what he says.
Well, let's go back to your first question. And your first question is, what is the financial motivation behind bringing so much illegal aliens into the country, so much immigration into the country? And it goes back, Karl Marx got this one right. And he said there's an ongoing struggle between capital and labor. And right now, capital is winning. Capital wins when there is a surplus of labor. See, my first job ever, I was a dishwasher. I was 15 years old. I was making $1.60 an hour. And I thought I was living in the tall cotton. Because $1.60 an hour back then was good money, because you could buy gasoline for like 14 cents a gallon. It's that's how long ago it was. But whenever you bring in, whenever you have distortions in the labor pool, that we've brought in these millions and millions of people, low skill people, we've taken all of the entry level jobs that kids in this country could have gotten as teenagers, are now off limits to them. Because if I was 15 years old again and went to get the job as a dishwasher, I couldn't get it because some 35-year-old illegal Mexican has got that job and he's working for the same money that I would work for. Okay. So, you know, that job is off the table for me. It doesn't exist there. I can't get it anymore. And neither can any of these entry-level jobs for our young people. You go in the black inner city, and where you've got youth unemployment at 70%, how are they going to get a start in life with their first entry-level job what are they going to do to earn money, as kids? And so it pushes them toward not a productive life, but toward a life of crime. And so these type of issues need to be addressed.
They do. Absolutely.
We have to remove the distortions that illegal immigration causes to labor rates. It pushes wages down. There's no need to pay more because you can get somebody to do it for less because we got so many of them. You couple that with the other globalist dream here, and that was to offshore all of our jobs and factories, our middle class jobs. We were told back whenever they were crafting NAFTA and GATT and talking about letting China in the WTO, that the U.S. was going to get rid of all of these low-wage manufacturing jobs, and we were going to bring in high-wage knowledge worker jobs. Well, here we are, we're 20, 30 years into this now, and I haven't seen any of these knowledge jobs come here yet. We still don't have them. Nobody's making more money. Everybody's making less money. So you've got two pressures on the middle class. You have the bottom end where there's downward pressure on wages because of the surplus of low-skilled labor because of illegal immigration. And then you have all the middle-class jobs, all the factory jobs are going overseas. So there's downward pressure on wages there. That's why the middle class is being decimated. That's why everybody is suffering. And Reagan said it right, all ships rise with the tide. Well, all ships go down with the tide as well. Mm-hmm. And we're at a very, very low tide moment here. And, how do we do what is best for the American people? And what do we do what's best for the American worker? The American working class has taken it on the chin here, since they passed NAFTA and GATT. And, entire industries. I was a semiconductor guy. My industry doesn't live in this country anymore. It's all overseas. It's all in China. It's all in Southeast Asia. We haven't built a new wafer fab in this country in almost 15 years. And without that, we're never going to get there. We're never going to get that back. It's gone for good. And even if you wanted to bring it back, it would be hard to find the people who still have the knowledge base to create another wafer fab in this country. It's once
a brain drain.
Once you've taken the team apart and all these people aged and retired, how do you get them to go back to work? How do you put together that team again? How do you get the people to get? It's a very difficult task. Yeah. But it can be done. I think Trump has got some really good ideas, and he's talking about the thing that Trump has been clever about, and he's talking about American manufacturers. If you take your factory and move it to Mexico or move it to China, you want to turn around and sell your product back into this country. You're not going to be able to do that without paying some sort of a tax or tariff. I think it's smart. It doesn't matter whose label is on it. It doesn't matter if it's General Electric or Apple Computer or General Motors. If it's not made in the USA by American workers, let's put a 25, 30, 35, 40% tariff on it. And let's tax it coming in so it's more expensive. Yes, it's more expensive. But people say, well, people will have to pay more if they want to buy these American products now. No, they won't, because you take the money that the tariff generates and you abolish the IRS, you get rid of the income tax, and let the people in this country who are working, who are earning money, keep everything they make. The import tariffs and taxes like that are the only constitutionally mandated legal way for this government to raise money.
Mike, do you feel that Trump is online with that? Do you feel like he's on in many of the blogs out there, they're presenting him as being somebody who will potentially remove the Federal Reserve and remove the IRS?
Well, I hope that he is. Have I met with the man? Have we sat down and talked? No, we haven't. But I'm seeing early indicators that perhaps he might be. And I see merit in this because, and if the government still runs a deficit, then we have something else. We have another card up the sleeve that we can play, and that is get rid of the income tax. We have an underground economy out there that is approximately 40% of the known economy. let's institute a national sales tax that if you don't want to pay taxes, don't buy anything. But have a national sales tax. So if you're a 501c3 tax exempt corporation, you want to buy a Learjet for your CEO to go fly around in, you still have to pay the sales tax when you buy it. We need to rearrange how we tax people in this country. Like I said, there is a huge underground economy out there that pays no tax. I don't care if you're a drug dealer, if you're a stripper at the Boom Boom Club, if you're a bartender, if you're anything along those lines, people who work for cash under the table, they need to pay their share of tax as well. And by having a point of use sales tax would be a wonderful way to do it. And if you don't want to affect the poor, exempt food, exempt medicine. There might be 2 or 3 other things you want to exempt, but you can exempt certain things, and you can allow people to pay the tax that they need to pay. Everybody needs to have skin in this game. There is no free lunch, and so tax the entire economy. Don't just tax the visible parts of the economy. Tax the underground economy as well. And so those 2 things, we can change how this country does business. We can make this country a much, much better place. So you don't have to make convoluted decisions based on how the tax code is written. Let's get rid of it.
I want to remind people that we are at the end of a world age and the initiatory stage of a new one. And as we talk about that all the time, we tend to forget that it is notoriously evident that at the end of world age, it has become so perverse and so corrupt and so despicable in the way that it operates. Its whole general modus operandi is really just to the very core inhumane, really. And the same goes with the way that the government runs, because the government is just kind of a microcosmic snapshot of what's going on within people's minds and what they, the gimme, 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 and it's all about me kind of stuff. And so I think, Trump represents this radical mind consciousness shift that we are really being forced and being promulgated into this future way of looking at things. And what I would say to you, Mike, and the reason I was commenting about IQ versus intellect and that kind of thing, is that our DNA is changing. So are the DNA strands of children now. And they're coming in, no matter what their skin color is, they're not going to be able to be affected by the bioweaponry, the implanting, the mind control stuff. They're going to be able to activate and survive in a much different way than any of us have in our life. So I'm only embedding that because it's important for us to remember where we're going. This is a bridge. I feel that Trump is a bridge to really bright and bigger things. Is he perfect? My God, no. Okay. But for someone who comes in who is not a politician and not a lawyer, those 2 things right there is a big deal to me. But tell me a little bit about how you see his immediate release of an executive order that scraps the TPP. How do you think that's going to affect us overall?
Well, I think it's going to be a major benefit. All of these free trade agreements have been an unmitigated disaster for the American working class at every level. Unmitigated disaster. Here's the thing people don't realize. Even if you're the CEO, you're still labor. You may be making more money than the line worker.
Very true. Good point.
But unless you're capital, unless you're a principal in the business, unless you own equity, you're still labor. And so all of this has been a disaster for the American working class at every level, period. And I think getting out of the TPP, see, globalism is Zionism. And you have to remember that the protocols of the learned elders of Zionism of Zion is a template to take over the world. And this template has been at work for a very, very, very long time, and it's and they're still progressing it. And it brings me back to one of my points that I've been with is, I write business plans that have a 5-year window to them, start to finish. And you rewrite the business plan on an annual basis going 5 years out. That's as far as we can see. But somebody out there or something out there is putting together plans that span 100 years and span 500 years. And it's not me. It's not us. It's beyond the human time scale. You look at how we are in this country. We graduate high school at 18, we retire at 65. We've got 7 years out there to go out and make our mark and to accomplish everything we're going to accomplish in this life, in our working life. We can digest 5-year increments. Something out there is digesting in 100+ year increments, something that is beyond a human time scale. What it is, I have no clue. I have different theories, different thoughts, but I don't know what thinks beyond 100 years at a stretch, but something does. It's out there. So
yeah. So the other thing I wanted to ask you a little bit about is the financial market is kind of having a heyday, slicing and dicing Trump, and they're basically saying that because of his personality, they feel that he's too rash and too disruptive because he's willing to make a decision on the blink and change of a dime, and that ends up being that correlates with the financial market. I just kind of wanted to see what you think about that from.
Well, right now we're watching the Trump rally. The Dow went over 20,000 for the first time ever here last week, and the markets are way up on a Trump presidency because they know he's going to make the U.S. economy better. But I'm going to steer the conversation a little bit this time because Trump is all about let's make America great again.
Yeah.
The single most important thing Trump can do if he wants to make America great again is to let's have a legitimate investigation into 9/11 and let's bring the real perpetrators to justice.
That's awesome. Yes,
everybody knows that what we were told is a lie. Aluminum jet aircraft do not cause buildings of the size and magnitude of the World Trade Center to come down. It just doesn't happen. There's not enough kerosene in the world to cause the effects that we all witnessed on 9/11.
Right.
And so it's time to tell the mainstream media bullshit. Enough. They're still sticking to the dialogue. They're still sticking to the script. That 9/11, 19 Arab hijackers with box cutters did this and brought down the World Trade. Bullshit. We have a criminal class in this country who profited off of this, who made a lot of money off of it, and who did it to advance a political agenda to get the United States, the American people, to support wars in the Middle East, initially Iraq and Afghanistan, and as Wesley Clark said in 2008, the 7 other countries that are now on the list.
7 countries, yeah.
And if Trump wants to make America great again, you go out and you have a legitimate investigation. You don't even name the people. You put a committee of 25, 50, 100 people out there, and you send them out to investigate. Let them go, and you don't disclose who they are, but you give them subpoena power, and you don't disclose who they are to protect them from the power structure who will kill them in order to keep these secrets. But you go out and we find out who the real perpetrators are. Some of us veterans today, we already know who they are.
Sure.
But we have to go through the process, and we need to bring these people to justice. And a couple things would happen. One of them is you would see money flowing back into the United States like never before. Do you wonder why these companies keep so many trillions of dollars overseas? It's because they know that the United States has been run by a criminal gang that perpetrated 9/11. If you're going to invest, one of the first things you do is you manage sovereign risk. And one of the first things on sovereign risk is the government honest? Is it corrupt and criminal? And if it's a corrupt and criminal government, you do not invest much money there. You do not risk your capital there. That's why so much money has fled the country, because these CEOs, they know they have a responsibility to their shareholders to protect their investment.
Mm-hmm.
They can't invest in the U.S. while we're being run, while this great crime continues on. So if Trump would do this, you would see money flow back into the USA, big time.
Yeah, and you know, the banking.
Let me finish.
Okay.
And the other thing you would see is that the other nations of the world would put down their guard and say, look, we know what happened at 9/11. We know it wasn't 19 Arabs with box cutters. We know that wasn't it. And they're finally bringing the bad guys to justice. We can let our guard down now, because now they've got honest management running the country. That is a fundamental thing. You want to have better relations with Russia and China? Bring the 9/11 perpetrators to justice, the real ones, not this fake stuff. You know.
Well, and you know that once you do that, that's a whole house of cards falling, because it's not just who made that decision. It's very deep pockets and involving a lot of different factions of society. It'll be the biggest disclosure in many ways, far beyond even the ufology disclosure, you know, and it'll actually possibly tap into that.
Well, I think that they're tied together. I think there's a connection. And like I said, something that thinks beyond the human time scale has been directing events on this planet for some time. I can see it in a number of, they leave artifacts behind. You know, of what their plan is. You never know exactly what's going on until later, but artifacts. You know, I mentioned one earlier, the rewriting of the Schofield Bible to make Israel the God's apple of God's eye. That's one of them. The Federal Reserve is another one. That's an artifact. It's over 100 years old. It's still in place working. It is still consolidating the wealth of the world into fewer and fewer hands. Mm-hmm. The Frankfurt School that I mentioned earlier, that's another artifact that's left behind that changes academically how we view things from what we knew were truths 100 years ago. Mm-hmm. You don't see it directly, but the artifacts are there if you look for them. So something is playing in a time scale that is beyond the human time scale. Like I said, we have 47 years from the time you're out of high school till you retire at 65 in order to make our mark on the world. Something is thinking 2-3 times that amount of time and space. I don't know anybody or anything that has that capability.
Yeah, I totally agree. So, you know, one of the hot potatoes is ISIS. And Trump has come out here as of late and said he was going to destroy the ISIS within 1 month. Can you give us a little bit of maybe explanation as to how he can feel so confident to do that when it's been going on for years and years and years?
Well, the first thing he needs to do is purge the U.S. intelligence community, because ISIS is a construct of intelligence agencies, both foreign and domestic.
Correct.
The CIA is up to their eyeballs in it, as well as perhaps others of the 17 intelligence networks that the U.S. has at its disposal. We know Israel is involved. We know Saudi Arabia is involved. We know Turkey is involved. We know France and the UK are involved. So if you want to take ISIS apart, the first thing you do is you purge the CIA. You know, we still have not come to terms with the fact that in Afghanistan, the CIA is the largest purveyor of opium in the world, that we had U.S. soldiers guarding opium fields, that there's more opium in the world today than there ever was. You see it every city. Drug overdoses from opium products are at an all-time high. This is the CIA's black budget. This is where they get their money. This is how they fund it. It's their black budget, and it's time to purge them. And
hasn't Trump done that? He's pretty much put the CIA on notice, has he not?
He's putting them on notice, but you have a problem, and that is, okay, you're a CIA operative. You've been over here working the poppy fields in Afghanistan. You've set up your distribution network in Russia, in the USA, China, around the world where you're selling your product. If they fire you from the U.S., from the CIA, start up as an independent business, independent contractor. You do your own thing. These people not only need to be purged, but they need to be incarcerated, renditioned, whatever it is, for a period of time to where the network that they have built collapses.
Yes.
That you can't say, okay, you're fired from the CIA, we turned off your phone, you don't have your parking spot, good luck in your retirement. They're not going to retire. They're going to continue to do the same things, cause the same mischief that they always have.
Mm-hmm.
And so these people need to be renditioned, and they need to be held using the tools that George W. Bush granted us with the Patriot Act. And we needed to put them away for 15, 20 years so that network can fall apart.
Yeah, very good point.
So,
well, now another thing I thought that was really interesting as of late is Donald Trump actually said that if you want to present a new regulation for you
have to get rid of two.
You have to get rid of two. I thought that was brilliant. So
I think it is too, and I think it's the kind of thing that we need more of, because we don't have a sunset clause in our laws and in regulations, and we also don't have a method of measuring how effective they've been. I'll go back to the war on poverty. Lyndon Johnson's pet project. It created the welfare state as we know it. It hasn't worked.
Mm.
Do you know how much money the U.S. has spent since 1965 when Lyndon Johnson kicked that off?
No.
Take a guess. It's a big number.
Okay. So I'm going back to Lyndon Johnson's day, so I'm thinking 65 million.
No, the U.S. has spent $23 trillion on the war on poverty. Okay?
War on poverty.
We have more poverty than ever before. So what the point I'm trying to make here is that we create these programs that go on and on and on, and nobody ever looks to see, did it work or did it not work?
Well, because
so it's time.
It's a corrupt, let's make money and have deep pockets. This isn't, government means mind control. That's
but the thing of it is they're fleecing the American people. The people who are supposed to be beneficiaries of the war on poverty are not benefiting. They're locked in it. There's no way out. They're stuck in bad schools. They're stuck in inner cities. There's nothing has been fixed. Yeah. They just keep extracting more money from the American taxpayer, and not only that, but they keep borrowing more money from foreign sources that our grandkids are going to have to pay back, and we're pissing it away.
Yeah,
it's not accomplishing the goals it was designated to accomplish. You can say the same about the war on drugs. You can say the same about the war on terror. These things don't work. They're not effective programs, and they need to be curtailed and eliminated. And so I think what Trump's doing with one regulation you want to pass, you have to eliminate two. I think it's wonderful. I think that would be a good start.
Well, yeah, it's cutting back on the red tape. I thought if you wanted to, I have a list of executive orders here that have been passed thus far, just the primary ones. And I was actually very surprised when I was reading through them. And it's kind of a compiling list where they add on every day as he. So one of them was he's freezing the federal workforce.
Mm-hmm.
Have you heard about that? Okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's effective as of tomorrow, by the way, everybody.
Well, not only is he freezing the federal workforce, but he's also looking to downsize it by 10%.
Right. And now this does not apply to military personnel or heads of the executive department.
Yeah.
But I thought that sounds great. We also talked about the scrapping of TPP, Trans-Pacific Partnership. If you've never read up on that, it is... It was without a doubt one of the scariest.
Well, the TPP takes
Man.
Takes the judicial option away from sovereign governments and sovereign people and gives it to multinational corporations.
Correct.
And so it was really a big blow to national sovereignty. Well, like it or not, I'm an American. I want America to do well. I want my people to do well. I love my country, my people, and my culture. And I want them to do good. For the malmanagement of Mexico or the malmanagement of Myanmar or Indonesia. I don't care how they run their show. That's their problem.
Yeah. My
problem is how my people do. How my people do here. This is what I want to see do well. Would I like to see everybody in the world do well? Absolutely. But I'm not on the ground in Indonesia or Myanmar or Mexico. I don't have influence there. Those people have to figure out their own local solution, and they should have their national sovereignty as of self-determination, that right to do it. I mean, look at Syria. I mean, Bashar al-Assad, re-elected September 2014 by 87% of the population. They love the guy, but yet the U.S. comes in and wants to micromanage and top the government.
Yeah.
Just like they did to Viktor Yanukovych in Ukraine. The U.S. spent it's nonsense.
It's imperialism is what it is. At its best.
It is, but you have to remember that the U.S. government has been hijacked. It does not represent the American people anymore. The strongest influence on the U.S. government is the Israel lobby. Never, ever forget that. And the Israelis and the people of that religion and that biological descent have their own agenda. They look at themselves as Jewish first, and then as American second. And to a man, and woman out there, I won't leave them out, but they value their relationship with the tribe and others of their persuasion more than they do as Americans. It's just universal. And let's talk about what disturbs me about Trump.
Say that again, because I couldn't hear you.
Oh, I said I'll tell you what disturbs me about Trump next after you ask your question.
Well, all I was going to comment on is, I've often said that in order to heal the planet, we have to heal ourselves first. It starts from here and now. And the same applies with our own countries, our cities, towns, countries, okay? It's really important that the United States heal itself. And healing itself, it definitely involves where do we go from here as far as creating more well-being, okay? And that would be, some of the things he's doing, I am just completely behind him 100%. Now, I was not real happy to see he's advancing the Keystone pipeline. I've been told that he has investments in oil.
He's all about jobs, and he looks at that as jobs and energy independence.
Yeah. I kind of knew you were going to say that. Uh-oh. Did I lose you, Mike?
Investment portfolio looks like. I have no way of knowing. But, there's some common sense things. And the whole fracking thing scares the heck out of me because, as I stated, once you contaminate the aquifers, they're contaminated. There's no way to undo it. And, I don't want to have to contend with that as a function of time, particularly if you look at the Ogallala Aquifer, which is underneath the entire Midwest, which makes the grain belt of, Kansas, Nebraska, Iowa, all that possible. Once that's contaminated and, groundwater is no longer potable, how are we going to feed ourselves? So that's a bigger, more important question.
Good point. He's also talking about expediting environmental review on infrastructure projects. It says here, it's been routinely and excessively delayed by agency processes and procedures to review infrastructure projects in the United States. This action instructs the chairman of the White House Council on Environmental Quality to create expedited procedures and deadlines for environmental review and approval for high priority infrastructure projects. What do you think?
Well, I think it's necessary. I mean, how many critical projects have we had delayed or killed because of things like the snail darter? And for those of you who don't know what the snail darter is, it's a little fish that lives in the American River, the Sacramento River. And that is one of the reasons that the California agriculture belt, the Central Valley, is not getting the water it needs in order to prosper and do what they do. As far as feeding the rest of us is because of the snail darter. That's why. So I think these things have merit. There has to be a weighted equation. There's an economic benefit. There's a human potential benefit as far as feeding people, which I think is important, versus the life of some little minnow that only lives in one area. And
you just have to look at that, Mike, and say, okay, well, above that, what was the agenda to even allow that to happen? And it always ends up, if I look at things this way, I always end up realizing, well, it was water.
Well, no, let me cut to the chase here on this one. What the water shortage in the Central Valley is about, it's about a change of ownership. It's about driving the farmers who've been in there since the pioneer days, driving them out of business so new ownership can come in and take it over once they've been bankrupted. This is the same template that they used in Oklahoma during the Dust Bowl. The purpose then was they wanted to drive all those dirt farmers off their land so they could develop the oil that was beneath the surface. This is a little bit different in that it's a transfer of agricultural property from one ownership to the other. It's the same template that they used during the S&L crisis, where you had people who had buildings, you change the tax laws, they lose the building, and now somebody else comes in and buys it for pennies on the dollar. That's what this whole banking thing is all about. They have control of environmental regulations. All of these things are meant to transfer from the current owners to the new owners, and that's what the water shortage in California is absolutely all about.
Thank you for that. It's very staged. It's
very, very, very staged.
Yeah, there's a woman in particular, I can't think of her name, but she is going all over the place trying to show people the scientific backing that we've never had a shortage in water, and that it's all been misconstrued and also manipulated. So, of course, where does that go back to? Money and power, Well,
but like I said, there's nothing new under the sun. And if you go back and you study the Dust Bowl and you look at how they were leveraged by the banks to overfinance their farms. They lost the farms all to get it ready for Mr. Rockefeller to come in and buy, so he could have all those rights to all the billions of barrels of oil that was beneath the surface. You could look at it again. I mean, why did we have prohibition in this country? And I'll tell you, the Detroit was, when Prohibition was introduced, Detroit had not yet standardized on petroleum or alcohol-based engines. So what did Mr. Rockefeller do? He funded the temperance movement and had alcohol made illegal for a time, long enough to allow Detroit to standardize on petroleum-based, and then he removed the prohibition, and alcohol flowed freely again.
I did not know that.
All of these things happen. These things are all staged. They're all set up. And we as the American people see things in too short of a time scale. We're busy looking at a 5-year plan. Somebody else is out there looking at a 100-year plan. And so we need to change how we look at things and take a much, much longer view, because these things have happened time and time again. Most recently, the S&L crisis, the mortgage crisis, all those homes that were foreclosed. Hey, guess who owns them now? The banks. And the banks have hired management companies to rent them out. We're becoming a renting society, not an owning society. Yes. Yeah. All of these things that they play, like I said, it's a consolidation of wealth into fewer and fewer hands every generation. And it's going to continue until we get rid of the Federal Reserve.
Yeah, I'm really hoping that Trump is the president that ends up bringing that forth, because a lot of people are waiting to see where he's going to go with 9/11 investigation, and the Federal Reserve, because he keeps dropping it. He keeps talking about the Federal Reserve and what he's going to do. He has to address it. I think another thing, Mike, of course, we both will agree, is promoting made in the USA pipelines to use materials and equipment produced in the country. So that's,
yeah, well, he said that, and the tagline he said that I liked was "Buy American, hire American." You know, and I think it's time to get bumper stickers and to put those all over every place. And if I owned a business right now, if I had a restaurant, I'd put that in my front window: "Buy American, hire American." Because it's time to, you know, take the gloves off and say, look, you know, our country is hurting. Our people are hurting. And it's time
I think,
for
you know,
us
Mike, that's the problem, is that people don't really have a perspective on that because of the mainstream media. They've been glossing it over, and they've been actually kind of pumping out information how great our economy is starting to pick up, and that there's more new jobs, and that there's more small businesses popping up everywhere, which, you know, even that, if you look at how many small businesses are popping up everywhere, well, could that have any relationship to the fact that a lot of people have lost their jobs, you know, and they don't have any?
Let me give you a hint. Okay, it was January 5th or 6th. I was in Arizona. I had some legal issues to deal with down there, but I picked up a copy of USA Today. And on the economy page of USA Today, it says unemployment at 4.8%. And I thought, wow, that is outstanding. 4.8%, that's virtual full employment. But then in the same article, the very same article, it says unemployment is at 4.8%, but yet 98 million Americans of working age do not have jobs. So
Wow.
how can we have conflicting information like that? It's because they change the metrics on what the unemployment rate means.
Yes.
Now, if we were to take the metrics that were employed when Ronald Reagan took office in 1981 and apply those to today's unemployment rate, we'd probably have 35% unemployment, which is very, very, maybe higher. I don't know. I haven't done the math on it. I haven't worked out the equations. But whenever you have USA Today, like I said, it was January 5th or 6th. If anybody wants to go research it, they can. 2017. You can look at it, and it's frightening to see within one article the conflict of information and of data they're giving you. It tells you how biased it is and how much they're promoting an agenda. The mainstream media, whether it's print, whether it's TV, radio, whatever, it's all a propaganda machine. Don't believe a damn thing they say because it's a lie. Everything they tell you is a lie. And just like everything that academia is telling you is a lie. Our physics is not the correct physics. Our, you know, like I said, the Frankfurt School, sociology, psychology, anthropology, forget them. It's a bunch of bunkum. You know, there's this whole you know, LGBT, whatever that is, agenda out there. Do you realize in 1987 that if you were homosexual, you were considered to be mentally insane? You were not mentally sound, you know, and now they're promoting this agenda everywhere. Wait a minute, something's wrong here. It's time to come back to basics. It's time to take a look. It's time to become critical thinkers again and figure out what's really going on. Use discernment around you.
Well, luckily, Trump is definitely taking some action with that. That's kind of cool. That's been a real unique situation with this presidency. I heard it's been, twice now that he sat down with the mainstream media and said, you're printing lies, you're misquoting me, you're not giving me a fair shake, and therefore I'm going to ostracize you and prevent you from even you know, providing any kind of coverage on these particular events if you don't kind of shape up or ship out. Do you have any information on that or any ideas on that?
Well, actually, I think it's a national security issue, and I think Trump has within his wherewithal as a commander-in-chief and chief executive of a country to revoke their FCC license. and say, look, you're not going to report the truth. You're not going to be factual. You're not going to be journalist. Then you don't have the right to broadcast, and you have lost your license. And I think that would have a profound impact. Break up the media monopolies. I mean, most people don't realize this, but the same company that owns your broadcast media also prints textbooks for your kids in grade school, in high school. It's all integrated. You can't buy a book at Barnes and Noble or your airport books. It's all owned. It's all controlled by the same 6 corporations, 3 of which are defense contractors.
Can you name those? Can you name those for us, Mike?
General Electric is one. That's one that comes off the top of my head. GE is one of the biggest ones out there. Okay. But give me a day, and I'll give you all 6.
Okay.
But it's the other thing that's been going on in this country that we haven't talked about is the lies we're told. I mean, remember when Reagan deregulated the airlines?
Oh yeah.
We had 153 national carriers back then. We're down to 6.
Wow.
Okay? So deregulation, which is going to improve competitiveness, and airfares are going to fall. There's going to be more choices for everyone. It's a bunch of bullshit. It's just the opposite. Anytime they say they're going to deregulate something, it means they're going to consolidate that entire industry. The same thing happened in telecom. In telecom, we had I got my facts wrong. We had 56 national carriers back when Reagan deregulated the airlines. And telecom, we have 153 national broadcast networks. Well, we're down to 6. And it's sad that anytime they want to deregulate anything, it means the private equity firms are going to get involved, and they're going to do what they call industry roll-ups, and they're going to eliminate all competition, and you're going to have a group of between 4 and 6 companies that are going to control it all. It's what they used to call a trust, what now we call a cartel.
Yeah.
But they control pricing, they control availability, they control everything. So right now there's 2 major roll-ups going on right now. One of them is in grocery stores. I don't know if people know this or not, but Safeway and Albertsons are now owned by the same company, which is Cerebus Group out of New York. A guy named Steve Schwartz. He's directing that roll-up. And there's another roll-up going on, and this one's going to surprise you. That's in firearms. Remington, Browning, Winchester are all owned by the same company now. So, and so you look at these things, but anytime they deregulate something, look for it to be consolidated. Your choices will get fewer. It could be more hard to deal with, it'll be on their terms, not yours, and you're going to pay more for it. So it's time to stop this nonsense. It's time to go after these private equity firms and hold them accountable for the FCC laws that they break. And it's time for the FCC to grow a pair of teeth and actually do its job, because they are industry's lapdog right now.
So that I would imagine, because he's a businessman, Donald Trump would be very anti deregulation. I mean,
I'd like to think so. I don't know, because deregulation sounds great. Boy, get this monkey off my back and let industry go. It sounds great, but that's not how it turns out to be implemented.
Lots of processes and lots of red tape.
Anytime we've been told that, it's turned out just the opposite. Let me tell you what bothers me about Trump now, okay?
Yeah, because I wanted to ask you a couple of juicy questions that I came across.
Here's what bothers me about Trump.
Okay.
If I was a billionaire and if I wanted to open a casino in Atlantic City, you'd find my body in a dumpster. It's a closed shop. It's owned by organized crime.
Yes.
Las Vegas, Atlantic City, organized crime owns it. Nobody gets in there except them. How did Trump get to have a casino in Atlantic City unless he's got some relationship there with organized crime?
Right.
That's what really, really, really bothers me.
Well, that
The
was
other,
one of my questions. Okay. What else?
the other thing that bothers me is we're seeing a lot of Jewish neocon types appointed to White House and cabinet positions. That bothers me. The neocons need to be, I think, incarcerated until the end of time for what they've done. But it's time to take a fresh look. It's time to change American foreign policy. And it's time for us to become more engaging with the world, build a relationship on commerce, not on warfare. And if you worry about our military industrial complex dying, they don't need to die. They need to retool and direct their energies not toward killing people on the other side of the planet, but towards going out into space and exploring other planets, other solar systems, mining the asteroid belt, going out beyond and releasing the 7,000 patents that have been made secret so to protect national security. Right. It's time to bring all these things to the surface. It's time to say, look, if we're going to develop an economy, let's develop an economy on what we know we have. We've got 7,000 patents out there that nobody can take a look at because of national security. It's time to remove those restrictions. It's time to get those patents out there. It's time to reindustrialize the country. It's time to explore space. Let's go. I mean, I was raised during the era of Redstone rockets launching and Sputnik. I was 3 years old when they launched Sputnik. Okay, I remember it. I was a little kid. My grandparents were scared to death, and we went outside to look for it. We saw it. And they were scared, and I thought by now, I watched the lunar landings when I was a kid. I thought by the time I was 40 years old, I would be standing on Mars. And so far, I haven't been there yet. What happened? How did we let this get off track? We don't even have a space shuttle anymore. This is a national embarrassment. And let me give you a fact here. During the Mercury, Gemini, and Apollo programs, for every man they put in space, they employed 53,000 technicians and engineers working. Okay? So if we have an
job maker.
It's a great job maker. And you know what? Not only does it generate jobs, but it generates generations of technologies that came out of there. Do you remember your
expansion? It's an expansion of our consciousness on a global level, if you think about it.
But do you remember your first Texas Instrument calculator? How it cost you almost $200, and it was this big, but it could do all these cool things. And
I do remember that.
And now the calculator function is a subset on your phone. And phones have cameras. Phones have all these other features that are way beyond what a phone could do. All of that is a direct result of what we did during the launch to get the U.S. onto the moon. Mercury, Gemini, and Apollo. That's where all of these technology innovations came from. That was the well stream from which they sprung. And we need to go back to that, because that is a job creating and wealth creating mechanism to not just make the U.S. wealthy again, but to make the entire planet wealthy again.
Yeah. And well, now my other question and concern is with the success of the presidential election, which he claims he didn't expect, there is always this question mark as to where Donald Trump's money, like seed money, has really come from. And do you have any perspectives on his connections with the Rothschilds and the Rockefellers?
Well, I do not, but there is one hellacious internal debate going on within veterans today.
Okay, interesting.
And the issue was that back in 1990, Donald Trump was broke and bankrupt, and that he worked with. Now, I have to be very careful here, because whenever I say Russian organized crime, understand they're not Russians. They're Khazarians. They're Ashkenazi Jews who happen to have a Russian passport and speak Russian, but they're not Russian. They are not a Slavic people. Okay.
Got it.
And so that Trump made a deal with Russian organized crime, Ashkenazi organized crime from Russia, to launder money out that was being pilfered from the Soviet Union after the fall of the Berlin Wall, to refinance and refund all of his companies. Now, there is a debate going on in VT. Some of us are on one side, others are on another, and I'm on the wait and see. You have to prove it to me more than what you've shown me so far. So Gordon Duff and Ian Greenhall have been writing some articles on this. They're very good, but I need to see more. I don't know enough yet. I'm not yet convinced that that's the case, but it's got me thinking. It's got me looking at it.
Interesting. And what is your opinion about Donald Trump's marriage with Melania and the fact that there is word out there that she's transgender?
Oh, please, really? I mean,
I'm bringing it up because I'm covering Trump today.
Look at what we just got rid of. You talk about transgender. What about Mike Obama? I mean, our Mike, yeah.
He actually used to call Michelle Michael accidentally.
I know. I don't believe for a New York minute that Melania Trump is transgender. I'm sorry. I reject that out of hand. I've seen the photographs of her pregnant, and I don't think that you can make a transgender person can ever get pregnant. Okay, so I think those are unfounded.
I went a step further. I went and looked at her nude photos that she had done in her mid-30s or something. Or whenever she was getting started in her modeling career, I don't know when it was, and they were very tastefully done and they were stunning. And let me tell you, I mean, I took one look at her and said, if you're transgender,
sign me up. Yeah,
I'm like, exactly. I'm like, she was gorgeous.
She still is. I mean, she's absolutely lovely, and to see her as a first lady is so refreshing from what we've had the last 16 years.
There's an elegance. There's
an elegance to her that is reminiscent of Jackie Kennedy. And it's welcomed, and the American people like it. But Michelle Obama, I'm sorry, was an embarrassment. I mean, really. I mean, it's an embarrassment.
Yeah.
And I was not a fan of Laura Bush either. I mean, I'm not going to disparage Laura Bush. I don't know her, but just come on. We've got a lovely first lady right now. So let's make hay while the sun shines.
Now, here's a really hot topic. Okay, have you heard anything? Have you found anything to relate Donald Trump to either participating in any kind of pedophile, child sacrifice, satanic ritual stuff, events? Have you heard anything about that? Because he seems to be disconnected to that. I'd be curious.
I've not heard anything about it. I did see one headline in I think it was a Sorcha Fall, which is one of the least credible sources that there was some trial coming up for him with some underage girl or something. But I don't. That was the only thing that came across my desk. But Sorcha Fall has low to no credibility with me.
Yeah, I was just curious because I know that the whole Obama, Clinton, Bush, and then Bush administrations, I just feel like their days are numbered as far as that all coming forward.
Well, talking to one of my very dear friends who worked in George W. Bush's White House, he says, if you drop a pencil, you kick it down the hall before you pick it up. That George W. Bush was a latent homosexual, and not latent, an outright homosexual, in that the thing that he liked was tall, big men to be on their knees in front of him.
God, so interesting. Well, and it's coming around the corner pretty soon. Here, there will be a tribunal, an international tribunal, to be trying all of these characters, I'm calling them characters, for these crimes against humanity and people and children in particular. So,
Well, I told you before we started our interview that my dream last night what was about exactly that. And the essence of the dream was that we can no longer trust our courts, we can no longer trust our policing agencies to do the job of protecting our children, so that we're going to have to do it ourselves. And whether we have to go out and hang these people who are abusing kids or beat them with axe handles, it doesn't matter. But that we have to protect our kids and not take no for an answer on it. And because the system has failed us, it's failed our children. You know, we still have 500,000 kids go disappear every year in this country and never to be seen again. And
people need to open their eyes as to where the hell they really are disappearing to.
Well, not
This
only
is going to
that,
be a very intense time for people across the world to really face up to who is actually responsible for what they consider to be their enemy, or one that's not supporting they and their children. They're going to see it's right in their backyard with their own so-called government. So
it is. It's in your own neighborhood. You know,
yeah.
There's people that live within a stone's throw of you who are on the wrong side of this issue.
Yeah.
And I wish we had an easier way of identifying them, but once they're identified, show them no mercy, show them no quarter. Like I said, if you have to, beat them with an axe handle, and don't stop.
There's Mike's good old military background. Well, Mike, before I let you go, I just kind of wanted you to comment a little bit about the defense, Homeland Security, CIA. What are you feeling as far as that security defense aspect of Donald Trump's, what am I trying to say? Elected officials, or selected or appointed officials.
What do I think about his choices so far?
Yeah.
I think some of them are pretty good. I'm glad to see he's got 3 Marine Corps generals in there because I think they're the most trustworthy.
Interesting.
The Marine Corps is different than the Army and is much different than the Navy.
Yeah.
And the Marine Corps is different, and it goes back to being a corps. And do you know what a corps? Do you know what consists of a corps?
No.
3 divisions that constitutes a corps. And so the Marine Corps is limited in its size intentionally. Not like the Army that can expand exponentially, not like the Navy that can expand exponentially. But I'm glad to see that he had 3 Marine Corps generals. Quite frankly, I think that our military needs to be rebuilt from almost the ground up, starting with our military academies. I think that we need to have a complete turnover at West Point, Annapolis. I think the Air Force needs to be reincorporated back into the Army. I think it's too far out there on its own, too much discretion without enough oversight. But I think that we have some generals there who I don't know where they come down on issues. And I think we have some very capable colonels out there that need to be promoted into generals. And that I think that we need to force retirement on a lot of our military out there to rethink the whole business of how we defend this country.
Okay.
You have to look at the fact that we've not won a war since World War II. We have fought police actions. In Korea, Vietnam was a loss. Iraq has been a disaster. Afghanistan's been a disaster. We need people who are going to go out there. When they fight to win. But so far what they've been doing is they've been fighting to consume expendable munitions and to keep the cash flow going into the military industrial complex. That's not why a military exists. A military exists to defend the country, not to enrich the military industrial complex.
They've been very, very misused. Very misused.
Well, they've been very, very misused. And you look at things, I've got an 18-year-old son. And, one of the things he has considered was a military career. And, I would be very proud for him to go into the military, but I would be very afraid for him to go into the military. And the reason is because of how the military misuses the active duty personnel. There's no need to expose our young, our best and brightest to Agent Orange in the example of Vietnam. There's no need to expose our best and brightest in Afghanistan and Iraq to depleted uranium. These are things that even if you walk out of there without a scratch on you, that you're going to have health issues with for the rest of your life.
Absolutely.
And I think that the VA needs to be rolled into the Department of Defense. And I think that on any Department of Defense expenditures, that care of the veterans needs to be the #1 priority line item. And that would change how our military treats our active duty, so that they didn't have to incur unnecessary hazards that have nothing to do with fighting a war. Agent Orange had nothing to do with winning the war in Vietnam. It had to do with making Dow Chemical a lot of money.
Well, also, Mike, it's also the fact that the military is one of the #1. It's the #1 group of beings that they will use for experimentation with pharmaceutical drugs.
Absolutely. That's why. Remember back when they were going into the Gulf War I, when George H.W. Bush was there.
I have friends that came back from that war, and a lot of them are dead.
Gulf War syndrome that they. And they said nothing in the war got me, but all the injections and all the inoculations I got going over there. That's why I'm sick and dying.
Yes. Yeah.
And I absolutely agree, and that's why I think the VA needs to be eliminated, and it needs to be rolled. Care of the veterans needs to be the #1 priority of the Department of Defense, because it would. I mean, just think about it. Before you can buy a single missile system or a helicopter or a jet airplane, anything, you have to take care of the veteran from the last war. They're going to make sure that these veterans are the active duty do not have any unnecessary exposure to things that are going to damage them. Yeah. And we would not be using them as guinea pigs. We would not be using them to enrich Dow Chemical. We would not be using them to get rid of depleted uranium. We have nothing else to do with except use in weapon systems. And what people don't understand, that this uranium is not depleted, and that when you fire it, when it hits an object like a tank, it forms a plasma, it vaporizes, and everybody within hundreds of yards who breathes it is breathing those radioactive particles, and they're going to have that with them the rest of their life. And so,
well, and we can only hope that as we get into these newer energies, that we're going to see more and more that people will not be able to shoot a gun at all. People will not be able to injure one another at all, that we will actually be moved to a state of course, this is something that's not realistic at this moment, but it's something that we are moving towards. And I
agree. About 15, 18 years ago, I used to go elk hunting with friends of mine every year. And, suddenly I just couldn't do it anymore. I said, I don't need to go elk hunting. I can go down to Safeway and buy a steak. I don't need to go elk hunting. And it hurt my heart to actually kill a living creature. And so I don't do that any longer.
And now it's going to, the next phase for us, Mike, is we're going to stop. I'm already there. We're going to stop eating meat, because we're going to recognize that even though we didn't pull the trigger, we have to take some responsibility for the treatment of the animals within these massive processes of cows and pigs and chickens. And
let me chime in on that before we go.
Okay.
We need to change our paradigm on how we deal with industrial agriculture.
Absolutely.
It is not right. I don't like how we treat pigs, chickens, cattle. Don't like any of it. In fact, it is inhumane, and we as a people owe them better. Even if we're going to use them for food, we owe them at least a humane existence while they're here, number one. Number two is we got to stop Monsanto. Monsanto is poisoning the world. They are poisoning the world.
Dow Chemical.
Monsanto just sold out to Bayer Chemical out of Germany, and it's time to stop these companies. Glyphosate is one of the things that is an endocrine disruptor. It is killing all life on this planet, and even though they say it's safe, it's not.
Right.
It's not. And we need to stop it. I mean, it's up to us. The theme song on my radio show is the Superman theme song, and the reason I have that is because, folks, there ain't no Superman. It's up to you and me. We all have to take responsibility for this, and we all have to stop it. And so Monsanto Chemical and those who are purveyors of poison need to be stopped. And
totally agree with you. And good to note, Mike, because we're getting to the top of the 2-hour mark, but just so everybody is aware, so when did Monsanto officially get purchased by Bayer Chemical?
Well, it's in the process right now. I don't know that the transaction's gone through yet, but hopefully the Trump administration will kill it. And
we really need to keep our eyes on that, because that was a strategic move to pull the name Monsanto. People could continue to demonize or be focused on trying to bring Monsanto down. And what they've really done is they've just moved to a different name, a different strategy, so that they can keep on keeping on without people really recognizing.
Okay, let me give you 2 tidbits here before we go. Do you know what Monsanto's first business was before they were in the chemical business?
I actually read about that. Tell me.
Slave traders.
Wow. Yes.
They were slave traders. They brought African slaves into America to sell. That was their very first business that they were in, number one. And number 2, Vladimir Putin, God bless him, he has said that no GMO foods and no chemicals are going to be allowed in Russia, that Russia is going to become the largest producer of organic foods for the entire world. By golly, that is a step in the right direction, and that is the model that we in the U.S. need to emulate.
Yes, and we'll probably end up having to buy a lot of our foods from that location of the world. You can already see that in our future. So, anyway.
Well, Alexandra, what else you got? You got any other questions for me?
No, I've got a ton, but we're getting to the top of the 2-hour mark. So let's do this again. Especially, I apologize to everyone. I have roofers, and they're making an incredible amount of noise. So I hope that everything works out okay on the audio on here. But Mike, thank you for all you do, and thanks for staying on top of everything and keeping us posted. Definitely, I would love to hear from you for anything that you feel is going to start going down with 9/11. Definitely have an interview.
Well, it's up to us to lobby the Trump administration to do a legitimate investigation of this. And Trump is on YouTube right after 9/11 happened, saying that there's no way that this was what they said it was. He said that this was a controlled demolition. That the YouTube video is out there. Trump is a 9/11 truther, and hopefully he'll get around to that very soon. But if Trump wants to make America great again, that is the most important thing that he can do, is have a legitimate investigation, prosecute the real perpetrators, bring them to justice.
Totally agree. Well, thank you. We'll end it on that awesome note. Everyone, stay tuned. We have BBS Radio Station 2, Tuesdays from 3 to 4:55, airing this. If you don't catch it then, you can also catch it on YouTube and Vimeo. And you just look up Galactic Connection, and it's right there. And Mike, take care. You can check out Mike's other articles and information at veteranstoday.com.
Thanks, Alexandra. Have a good afternoon. Bye-bye.
Thank you, everyone. Take care. Bye-bye.